Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we've got the second game of the rivalry in, and at the return of the rivalry, I should say. So over at Barren County on Friday night, the Trojans won the game 23-7 over the Glasgow Scotties. The 16 points is, I believe, the most points that Barron's ever won in that rivalry by. I think they've played 38 times is what it worked out to when I was doing the math earlier today. And Barron had won in 2014, I think. No, not 2014. 2003, I think it was. I'm sorry. I got it all wrong. 1993, 21-7. I guess I can't remember that this is 2024, so I keep messing up my math here. Anyway, so they won 21-7. They won 23-7 on Friday night. And the thing about the game was, if you watched the game and you didn't root for a team, then you realized, okay, Barron won by 2 touchdowns and a couple of 2-point conversions, and they could have won by 4 touchdowns, or they could have lost by a point. Basically, based on the swings of the game, because Barron they really controlled the game. They dominated in, time of possession. They dominated in not really giving Glasgow anything. I think Glasgow finished with 115 yards of offense in the game. But they also turned the ball over a couple of critical times that Glasgow just could not finish drives on. And if that had been the case, I mean, we're talking about another 1-point game, just like we had last year, another barn burner. But Glasgow just could do nothing on offense other than hit a couple of big plays. One was a touchdown for Jarek Martin. And the Trojans just controlled the game for all intents and purposes, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up right there. I mean, in a lot of ways it was a funny game in terms of, like you said, in many ways Barron dominated the game in terms of, as you said, probably time of possession, probably 75 to 25%, I'm guessing. Plays run, Barron probably ran close to 25, 30 more plays than Glasgow. I mean, they just kept the ball.
Yeah.
And probably had close to 3 times as many yards. I know they doubled them. I think Glasgow had a little over 100 total yards, and Barron had close to 300. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, Barron dominated a lot of that aspect, Yet, because of turnovers, Barron had 3 turnovers, and the game is 15-7 late in the third, maybe early in the fourth. I can't remember exactly. And Barron turns it over on their own 5.
Yeah.
And Glasgow has it first and goal from the 5, and doesn't. They don't score. They had 4 shots at it, and Barron's defense rose up. Barron's defense played outstanding. Rose up, and Barron got it back and proceeded to take it downfield and score. Barron never punted. Right. The entire game either. So, I mean, the 23-7 win was, he's right. Barron could have easily, I don't know if Glasgow was going to win, but they could have tied them. And Glasgow kind of had the old bend but don't break defense. They did a good job of taking away the big plays from Barron.
Right.
Barron really did not have any big plays.
Yeah.
But that's what makes Barron so good offensively. They can have 13, 14, 15 play drives and score. Or, sometimes those drives faltered based on turnovers too. But I thought all in all, it was a outside of the turnovers.
Yeah.
It was a very good performance on Barron's part.
Yeah, it is the kind of thing that Coach John Myers can look at and say to his players, you clean this stuff up, we have a good chance to win a bunch of games this year. Not just, they have a good shot going 6-0 when they go play at Greene County on Friday night. Greene has got some injuries, and so they're not as good as they were last year. Barron obviously better than they were last year. We don't know how the district looks in terms of Central Hardin and North Hardin. North Hardin looks like they may be the better of those 2 teams right now. But Central Hardin has played a really tough schedule, and you're kind of just measuring them against their tough schedule. They've not performed very well against some of these teams that they are on their tough schedule. They've not won a game. So, Warren Central, Barron certainly looks better than Warren Central right now in that district matchup. And then you'll finish off the season against Allen County Scottsville, that's having one of its best years it's had probably in a decade in terms of like just raw talent that they have, and they're also undefeated at this point. So, the schedule kind of lines up. If you're a Barren County fan, you're looking at the potential, as long as we avoid injuries, which, there's probably a couple of key players that need to stay healthy. I'd say number one on that list is Tate Spillman. You're looking at a potentially historic season for the Trojans here, John.
Could be. Let's just go one at a time right now. They're 5-0.
You're not a football coach.
I'm just, from my coaching perspective,
Yeah,
I can't really do that. Look much past just the next game. But just getting back to that game, the Barren Glasgow game. First of all, the crowd was the biggest crowd I can remember at Barren.
Yeah, it was an awesome atmosphere.
Awesome crowd and atmosphere and so forth. The offensive line for Barren is just, if you want, the biggest improvement of Barren County from this year to last year is that line.
Yeah.
Ryan Harrison, I just wrote them down, Grayson Billingsley, Charlie Poland, Ethan Bertram, and Alex Sawyer. They don't score touchdowns, so they don't get talked about a lot, and that's just the way it is playing offensive line. But man, they do a tremendous job, and
that was one of the reasons at the end of the game I knew I was going to talk to a couple of players, and I wasn't sure who it was going to be. I wanted to talk to Dalen Thomas because he had the big touchdown run. But I asked Coach Myers and said I'd like to talk to one of the offensive linemen, and he said talk to Ryan Harrison.
Yeah, senior.
Yeah, and so I wanted to point that out.
It was a good interview. It was a good interview that you have online right there. But Tate only threw it 5 times, only completed 1.
Yeah.
So it was primarily on the ground. Tate, now he had over 100 yards on the ground himself. Dalen Thomas had 12 for 77, including a touchdown and a 2-point conversion once he reached over and scored. But I thought the 2 fullbacks played well. Cody Kearney and Corbin Wells, they had close to 80 between those two. And those are the tough yards that you have to gain. And then, like I said, defensively is the best I think Barron's played all year.
Yeah.
They did a really, really good job with Bryson Wilson had 6 tackles, and I thought he played really well among several. Jackson Bird was good on defense. So, I just thought overall that was not a lot of highlight plays. I think the longest, Dalen Thomas's 20-yard touchdown play was the longest for Barren. But I just thought defensively, Barren was very, very good. To be honest with you, Glasgow, I'm very, very impressed with Jarek Martin. He's a heck of a player. I've watched him in basketball, and it's either a Barren County deal or something because he is lights out against Barren in basketball. But he's a tough matchup, 6'4", maybe 6'5". And as a receiver, he's also played a little tailback and quarterback too. But man, he is a tough matchup. He had they gave him the ball more than he's been getting.
Yeah.
He had 3 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown. He also rushed it 5 times. I thought he was the real true threat that Glasgow had against Barren, because Barren kind of took away a lot of Barren. I think Glasgow had less than 50 yards rushing, so they were really good at that.
Yeah, Barren definitely took Cameron Bull out of the game.
Yeah, but it was just a good performance by Barren. And like I said, Glasgow defensively was solid. They just couldn't get the ball back much. Max Lee, I think, had 12 tackles and so forth, and they didn't give up a lot of big plays. You could tell they were scouted well, but to Barron's credit, Barren just kind of stuck with what they were doing, and all in all, I thought the performance by Barren was pretty good.
Yeah, I mentioned Tate Spillman, and you're talking about the defense.
Tate Spillman was good on defense too.
Yes, that's what I was about to say, because he had a hit on Jarek Martin that probably would have been a touchdown in just about any other game that Glasgow's played in, because it was a beautifully thrown ball by Hudson Gum. Jarek had beat the defender on him, and Tate Spillman just laid into him and knocked the ball loose. That was going to be a huge play right there, and the game was like dead even at that point. It could have swung the momentum in the game. And then Bray Bewley actually on offense made a big defensive play.
He did. Yeah, it was going to be an interception.
Yeah, because I think Brady Gary hit Tate Spillman as he was throwing the ball, came up short. Kellen Stone had an interception. Bray Bewley broke it up. Turned into a defensive back. There were moments in this game that were kind of key to that too, I thought, where, even though Barren had the turnovers, they had plays in the game that were also big plays that could have swung the momentum of the game, I thought.
Yeah, they just weren't any of those 70-yard interception returns or
Right.
receptions. You didn't have much of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It was both teams obviously were well scouted, and I thought absent, the Barron did turn the ball over more than they had been.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing that hurt them a little bit. But from the Barron perspective, I know they're pleased. Anytime that you beat Glasgow in football, they haven't done it very often. They've got to be on a high, being 5-0, and of course they've got to. I think with having Coach Myers in charge, he'll do a good job of kind of getting the players. You got to get, whether you win or lose this one game, you kind of got to get refocused, because for both Barron and Glasgow, you still have 5 more left.
Yeah.
So you can't let the Glasgow game cost you the next week, whether you win or lose. You got to get refocused and get going again.
And the funny thing is, despite Myers having previously been the offensive coordinator at Glasgow, I mean, he's not from here. He's one of the few coaches, I think, in the Barren County's history overall. I mean, because even if you go back to Arnett, he was from Monroe County. It meant a lot to him to beat Glasgow coming from Monroe County. So Myers, that game to him, he can seriously say, I'm glad we won it, but this is not the prize. And he, like you said, he's an experienced coach. He's a good coach. He's done a really good job through the years.
And having a good running game and a strong offensive line also, that will travel with them.
Yes.
I mean, I think you avoid a little bit more slumps when, you've got that offensive line and a running game to play behind. Mm-hmm. Kind of keeps you sometimes a little bit more even keel.
And in a way, in a strange sort of way, even though they won the game 23-7, Myers has an opportunity to go in the film room and tell them, but you could have lost because these are the things you got wrong. Yep. And we got out. We played well in certain ways, but we also were fortunate in certain ways.
15-7, like I said, and defense for the second straight week made a big defensive stand. They made a stand at the end of the game against Monroe, and that one was clearly a critical stand as well.
Back to the Jarek Martin thing.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this during the game because they ran a pitch play with him that was a big run. I think it was like 30 yards. And then they came back and ran the play again, and Barron had it sussed out. And yet he was still fast enough to get to the corner and get like 7 or 8 yards, even though they had the play strung out.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a big play guy.
He's a weapon, for sure.
And look at the touchdown. I mean, he basically took the ball away from 2 defenders to get the touchdown.
It was perfectly thrown.
Yes.
First of all, give Gum credit. It's perfectly thrown because there's in between like 3 players, including Tate Spillman. The safety went over to knock it down, and he just missed it.
Yeah.
So it was a great throw, but also good concentration.
Yeah. And it's the kind of thing where as that game was going on and then later, we go back to the Monroe game, and I think Bull had carried it 27 times for 177 yards in that 15-14 win over Monroe for Glasgow. And as that game was going on, I was like, as this season goes along, Glasgow's got to figure out kind of a way to have Jarek Martin touch the ball somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 times, whatever it takes, whether it's him running it, wildcatting it, throwing it to him. I mean, he's so good with the ball in his hands that you kind of have to put the ball in his hands more, I think.
Yeah, I would think that if he's on your team, you got to find different ways. Multiple ways to give him the ball. I mean, they know that too, and sometimes it's just a matter of as the season progresses, you find what you need to work on, what you need to change, and different way. You can't just play the same way in Game 6 as you do Game 1, and that has to, and most teams do make those adjustments. So I would think that would be part of it. Yes.
And then they have a tough couple of weeks coming because they play Adair County this coming Friday. That'll be their homecoming, as a matter of fact. And even though Easton Jesse's not playing, who played at Glasgow the last 4 years, they will. It's a critical district game. Adair County, I was a little surprised by their score with Monroe last week. They ended up beating Monroe 36-30. The part that surprised me was the fact that Monroe scored 30 points on them because they defensively have looked very good. Mm-hmm. We know the Easton's out, and so Monroe had a week to scout what they were going to do on offense, unlike Franklin Simpson the week before. But they didn't slow down Adair County, so it was kind of surprising me that Monroe put up the 30 points. I mean, we've both seen Monroe. They've not really generated a lot of points this season, so I thought that was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, that gives, I would think, a glimmer of hope for Glasgow. But, Adair's, it's one of the better Adair County teams. Mm-hmm. Adair is not necessarily known to be a mecca of football, but neither is Hart County.
True.
And so, sometimes things begin to, you just see these things kind of rise up. Like Hart County has continued on from last year. Once they made to the state semifinals, they lost a lot of kids, but they're still undefeated this year. And sometimes Logan County went through that run where they were terrible for years, then they got really good. Who knows? Barren County could be on a verge of a nice little run too.
Yeah.
So this is with Adair. It's rather unusual for them to have really big time football teams, but who knows? But Glasgow has the game is at Glasgow. Is that right?
Yeah.
This game's at Glasgow and so forth. So Glasgow will kind of have to reset, but clearly they have a good chance to beat Adair. Maybe Adair may be considered a favorite, but losing that quarterback can't help them.
No. Well, and I'd say right now the biggest thing, Glasgow's defense has not been bad.
No,
their
solid.
offense has really struggled. They've really just struggled to maintain possessions and score, which is just an strange situation for Glasgow usually.
Lost a lot of linemen from last year too.
Yep. They did. That's obviously shown up through the first half of the season. And then Caverna, they beat Shawnee for their homecoming 52-0. Didn't surprise me at all.
No,
they won that game.
No, that was one of their probably their easiest game they played so far.
Definitely so.
Yeah.
The one they have this Friday will not be.
Hart.
Yeah, they're at Hart this Friday.
Yeah, they'll be an underdog on this one.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah, just numbers-wise.
Yeah.
I mean, Hart's a physical team and so forth, and though Caverna has the Martin twins, and they have some explosive players on offense, Hart County would be hard for Caverna to slow down.
Yeah. And I go back to a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 3 weeks ago, when Glasgow beat Russellville. It concerned me some because I thought Russellville's front played pretty well against Glasgow. Maybe it was a little bit off because maybe Glasgow wasn't quite as good as I thought they were, and maybe Russellville was better than I thought they were. But I've kind of come back around to the fact that Caverna should, again, be favored to win that district.
They will.
Yeah.
They should be favored.
Yeah, I wasn't sure after
depending
I saw
on health.
play.
I mean, they can't. Certain teams can overcome injuries better than other teams, and Caverna obviously does not have a lot of depth.
Right.
A lot of teams that are in single A don't.
Right.
But but they have, with the players they have right now, they have good enough players, I think, to beat Russellville.
Yeah. Yeah, they have a pretty good run because after the Hart County game, they've got their 3 district games, and then they will close out against Monroe County. So, I mean, again, our prediction at the beginning of the year is still good in terms of it's just that maybe Barron's even better than I thought they would be, or maybe you thought they would be too. I mean, I knew they would be better, but they're actually playing better than I thought they would.
It's been I knew they'd be good offensively, and they are probably better than I thought, more explosive.
Yeah.
And the last, game and a half has been very encouraging defensively.
Yeah. And then Caverna, they are what I thought they would be. I mean, like you said, as long as you have the Martin twins, you got Russell Williams and Cortavian Maxey and Jalen Crane came back to play. You got those guys out there. They can do some things. And Glasgow, I think, Glasgow can still make a run in their district, but they do have some offensive scheme stuff that they probably need to figure out. And, I'm curious to see how they do that. Anything else stand out to you from the high school football from Friday night?
No, I mean, obviously the marquee was Glasgow and Barren. Then that was the one that nothing else really steps really other than South Warren took a pretty good loss to Manual, 35-7. And I'm not surprised they lost to Manual. That much surprised me a little bit.
Right.
But other than that, I didn't notice anything too out of the way.
Yeah. Well, it was a pretty busy Friday night. I think Franklin Simpson's not very good, but that's a little bit surprising. A critical game this coming Friday is Allen County versus Paducah Tillman. They've got to be 1-2 in that district considered right now.
Yeah, but we'll see about Allen. I mean, I think Allen is good. Paducah is at a different level.
Paducah might be one of the top 5 teams in the state.
Yeah, if Allen can play within 2 or 3 touchdowns, I think it'd be a great performance.
Yep. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, today was the start of the postseason for high school golf. The boys Region 3 golf tournament was played over at Indian Hills Country Club in Bowling Green. I went over there, got some photos. You can find those on 104thescore.com.
Wet day.
Well, and look.
Was it wet all day?
No, it was.
Okay.
It had not started raining whenever I left. And everybody was pretty close to done except for basically two groups. And the guy who was running the tournament said, I don't know if they'll get done before this weather moves in. And I don't think they did initially. I projected they'd be done about 3:30, and so with the tournament, but I think they just got finished, as a matter of fact. And I don't think they've decided the actual winner yet unless they finish the playoff, but Leighton Ritchie from Greenwood and Barton Rutledge from Allen County Scottsville tied for first at 4 under.
Which is 68 or
67. I think the par was 71 today.
Okay, all right.
And so I'm guessing they're having a playoff for the individual winner of the region there. The winning team, I believe, is Greenwood. Let's see what their final score was here. The winning team should have been Greenwood. Yeah, they were at plus 10 as a team. Bowling Green was at plus 14, and Allen County was at plus 17. So Allen County finished third in the region. The way this is now, since they changed this a couple of years ago, is you have this first round of state is what they call it. Other people call it a sectional. So it'll be regions 1 through 4. I think they're playing in Central City.
How many teams go to the next round?
2 teams, and then the next 10 individuals who are not on one of those 2 teams.
So Greenwood and Bowling Green moves on.
Yep. And then the way it works out for individuals is I think we only have one qualifier. It's going to be Griffin Jackson from Glasgow.
The 8th grader?
Yes. He shot 4 over and tied for 7th as an individual.
4 over, 75.
Yep. And he's been playing pretty well except for a couple of blips, basically the whole season, honestly. And so that means just off the top, me reading this off the top, that means as individuals, Barton Rutledge would qualify, Ben Shirley from Metcalfe County, Eli Stamper from Allen County, Scottsville, Dylan Fivish from Franklin Simpson, Griffin Jackson, and then, what is this kid's name? I think it's Caden Cross from Cumberland County. Cooper Sloan, I think, is the one from Hart County. Then we have Emmett Kidd from Metcalfe, Deaton from South Warren, Caitlin Walden. Well, what it is we actually have, for that 10th slot, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people tied for that 10th slot. I don't know if they're going to do a 6-person playoff for that 10th spot. I don't know what they're going to do, or if they all get to go. I don't remember exactly how they settled that. But anyway, unfortunately, Brayton Furlong ended up at 8 over, which was 1 stroke behind this group of 6 who were tied for 10th.
79.
Yeah, so he missed that by 1 stroke. I think he missed by 1 stroke last year too. It's just
that's too bad.
Yeah, he was playing real well, and he got to this one hole, and it just gave him a lot of trouble. And I think he had one other hole where basically he double bogeyed. But I mean, for the most of the day, he was playing at even, except for these couple of holes, and maybe there was one more. But he was playing pretty well. He just had one, as it happens. And we saw this last year with several of our golfers over there in that regional tournament at Indian Hills. There was one hole that just ate their lunch. And so, I mean, it's just, you have some of these days like this. Unfortunately, it's at the region, and when I talk to people, I mean, that's what they talk about. They're like, you play this whole time to try to get to this one day and play. All the rest of this is practice, basically. And sometimes you just get uptight. Sometimes something goes wrong. The weather's odd, like it was a few years ago at crosswinds when basically we had gale force winds coming in and whatnot. So you just never know, what's going to be the deal out there.
Well, hate it for him, but 79 is still not a bad score to say the least. Yeah, it's not bad at all.
No.
So of the Barren and Glasgow golfers, it's just Griffin Jackson that's moving on, right?
Yeah, he'll make that cut, and so, I mean, the way Griffin's played this year, he'll be one of those that goes over to that first round of state and has a real good chance of getting out of there. And he's been a threat. He's not really shot low enough to get into that -4 round range, but he shot well enough all year to be, at par or just above par, and at that tournament probably is good enough to get him a cut to the finals.
Where is the next round,
I think the boys are at Central City.
Okay.
I think is where the boys.
Muhlenberg.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the girls will be at Hopkinsville Country Club. Their first round of state.
Okay. And the girls' region is tomorrow.
Yeah. It's at Rolling Hills over in Russellville. Barren, I think we talked about this a little bit last week.
They got a chance.
Yeah, as a team, I mean, they have the group that can shoot in, a couple in the 70s, a couple like high 70s, low 80s. They probably need one of them to get down there low to really give them a good shot.
Yeah, they need to have 4 good scores.
They do, and then but they're right there with South Warren and Bowling Green all year. I mean, most of the tournaments they've played in, they've been 1, 2, 3. If they've unless it's Marshall County or Madison Central shows up and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, the tournaments they've played in together, they've been 1, 2, 3 right there with them. A couple of strokes off here and there, and honestly, you kind of expect Chloe Witcher to shoot the round she usually shoots. Lucy Zala's had some good days. Kinsey Edwards had some good days. But lately, Tinsley Nagel had a really good outing a couple of weeks ago. She's played real well lately, and Carden Kinslow has played real well lately. So
need 4 out of the 5.
Yep.
And the girl from Glasgow is
Emery Gardner. She's got a good shot.
Yeah, to qualify individually.
Yes.
Right.
Now their team is still very young. They have like Harlow Bell. She's like in the 7th grade. She looks like she's going to be a pretty good golfer. She plays well. Gracie Bell and Cord Jones. Anyway, and.
You're doing good. I can't remember any of these names.
I apologize. I just stumbled because she has a middle name that she uses as well. So anyway, so they've got several golfers. They're just a young group. Reese Cheney's out there as well. They're a young group. If they stick together, they have a good chance going forward. It's just that Barren is, they have Tinsley Nagel and Kinsey Edwards, who are both seniors. So they need to kind of get it done this year. And to have a really good shot, I think. And, when you look at it individually for the girls region, Kenzie Willen, she's just a sophomore. She's the defending individual champion from Cumberland County. And then you have, like I mentioned, you have Chloe Witcher who can get down in that round, be close to the bottom there. And then, Elsie Espinola and Cindy McClanahan from South Warren. You have the Childers sisters from Bowling Green. They both, I would say, have a shot. And I think there's a couple of more kind of out there in the wind, so to speak. I think a couple of, like Allen County. The girls is a little bit different because you have some individuals from schools where the teams aren't going to register much of a score, or may not even actually have a whole team who will have a chance to win the individual titles. That's kind of how that girls region is right now. So it's a little interesting. The boys region is kind of chalk at the moment. It's Bowling Green and Greenwood.
And they may run into some weather issues tomorrow.
Yeah, I think we've got like 70-something% chance of rain.
Yeah. And they'll play in the rain. They just won't play in the lightning.
Yeah, so hopefully we don't have any thunderstorms. But we've had some weird weather here the past 4 days, I do believe. And we'll talk some more about the weather here in a little bit because we're going to talk about the WKU football win over Toledo, where weather played a factor, I do believe, in helping the Hilltoppers get their act together. But anyway, anything else from the high school golf? I mean, it's amazing. They started July 22nd, and, 2 months later, here we are at the finish line with the regional part of it.
They're always the first to start and first in, right?
Yeah, they are. And this year, unlike many years, it's been hot the whole time. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you get to these regions, you have some little bit of weather. But today, it wasn't particularly hot out there, but you could tell it was muggy as all get out. Anyway, all right, this is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
All right, John, back here on the Brown Sports Bag, presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We had a fascinating, I think, college football game on Saturday night because WKU wasn't doing a whole lot. They were down to Toledo, and then there was a lightning storm. It really didn't rain a whole lot. I mean, it's just my son was over there shooting photos of the game, and he said that it just, like, the lightning was just incredible. And so the game was paused for 75 minutes. WKU comes back after the break and like a completely different team. I mean, they're causing Toledo all kinds of problems with their defense. Their offense puts up points. They tried twice to give it away, I think, in the last 2 minutes, and yet still managed to win it. And I don't know. I mean, I thought it was an impressive win because I thought that Toledo was probably going to run them over. Toledo had looked really good; they were undefeated, and I just wasn't sure what to make of WKU yet. Even though they beat Middle Tennessee handily, I still wasn't sure what to make of them. So I thought that was a pretty impressive win once they got the extra halftime.
I thought it was a great win. Now, I never thought Toledo was going to if you asked me before, I thought Western was going to win, simply because Toledo was coming off that monster win on the road at Mississippi State. Now,
right.
Granted, Mississippi State is not a very good SEC team, but a MAC team getting a win on the road and at an SEC team, that's still big.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought there could be a little bit of a letdown for Toledo coming in, and one thing about WKU with Coach Helton, his teams get better.
Yeah.
As the year goes on and so forth. They did not look good against Alabama to start the year, but Alabama's pretty darn good.
They haven't missed a stroke without Nick Saban.
So since that time, and plus the quarterback, I was excited to watch what's his name?
Caden Belkamp.
Play, and it wasn't. He didn't throw 5 touchdowns like he threw the week before against Middle, but he ran it twice for touchdowns. He made some mistakes. He coughed up a critical fumble. But I really thought this was an opportunity for Western playing at home against a good Toledo MAC team. And by the way, it's a conference that Western almost joined a couple years ago, except for Middle Tennessee threw the wrench into that plans because they wanted Western and Middle to come. But so I thought that was a really good win for Western Kentucky, and I'm a big fan of the MAC. I kind of like the MAC is a solid conference for years. They don't change much and so forth, but they have good football, and I thought that was a good win.
Yeah, the only reason I kind of was suspect of WKU playing that game against Toledo was, yes, there was a potential for the letdown, but Toledo just has looked really good. Like, their offense looks really good. And even before the weather delay, WKU's defense was playing well. They were struggling a little bit, I think, stopping the quarterback, especially like on runs, scrambles, that kind of thing. But I don't know. I mean, I guess they just – I just don't know. Maybe the deal was that Toledo got stiff while they were waiting on that 75 minutes and WKU got loose. Or they took that 75-minute weather delay to, like, really kind of study what they needed to do. But the biggest thing was their defensive backs just made some great plays.
Yeah, had an interception at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, and that was his second one, basically, that should have ended the game.
Right.
So, I mean, it was just an impressive, I thought, that part of it, what they did defensively. And Veltkamp, you're right. I mean, he was not as good as he was coming off the bench in his 2 previous outings in the bowl game last year, where he looked like, I don't know.
He didn't play bad.
No, it wasn't a bad game. It
wasn't great, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those where it's like, okay, I can see maybe what they see in practice from him about his decision-making a little bit and his ability to make quick decisions. But then he's like one of those guys that when the pressure was on and they needed a play in the fourth quarter, that's when he was making them.
Yep.
I mean, that's the impressive thing about him is you can watch him he's kind of like you can watch him for 3 quarters and you're like, I'm not sure if this is going to work out. And then you get in the fourth quarter, you need big plays, and maybe he just stops thinking and he just plays. I don't know.
I don't know, but he is taking full advantage of the opportunities that he has had. He's played, I think, 4 full games now. The bowl game, and 3 full games.
3 full games.
The bowl game last year, which he didn't start, but he played most of the game once he came in late in the first. And it started 2 games this year, and he is.
Well, no, he didn't start last week. He came off the bench.
Almost the same thing as the bowl game.
Yeah.
He came in the first. That's correct, and has 3-0.
Yeah, so you can't. He's a Manny Ramirez closer there, John.
He probably some people. He probably plays better than he practices.
Obviously.
I mean, obviously, he has he has a feel for what's going on, and then when you practice, you're not running for first downs and touchdowns. You mean you stop, they blow the whistle.
Yeah.
But he's a big kid.
Yeah.
6'5" and probably 240, 250. He's a big kid. He passes a look test. So very good win for Western Kentucky. Do they go to Boston College this week?
I believe that is correct, yes.
Okay, that will be a tough one.
Yeah. I'm
Boston College
fascinated that Boston College is on their schedule. I found that a weird team to be on WKU's schedule.
That's another probably a pay game.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, ACC opponent. But this one will be a tough one because they are Boston College is very, very well coached.
Mm-hmm.
It's the former coach at of the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
He was Bill Belichick's offensive coordinator.
Yeah, Bill O'Brien, is that it?
Yeah, and he also took over for Paterno at Penn State,
Mm-hmm.
and he built that program, rebuilt that program before he went to the Texans.
Yeah.
And he is a very good coach.
Yeah.
I mean, they will be physical, and it'll be a tough game for Western Kentucky. It's not like they're going to catch Boston College a big letdown because that coach, Bill O'Brien, is a no-nonsense, Belichick-like guy, and they'll be well prepared.
Yeah, he's kind of notorious in the NFL ranks because, I mean, he turned the Texans into something and then squandered it, apparently. I don't know. And maybe that wasn't on him. You know, I mean, a few years ago, if you listen to this show, we had a pretty long conversation about his coaching while he was in Houston. But nonetheless, he's done an exceptional job at Boston College because it's not really a place outside of the Doug Flutie years that's known for good football. And so they've become a formidable program with him there. So, you know, he knows how to recruit and his teams play well, and you know, especially in big games or in tough situations. But yeah, it'll be an interesting situation for the Hilltoppers. Meanwhile, the University of Kentucky beat Ohio like they should have, handily, and you know, so there was no hangover, letdown after the disappointing loss to Georgia, and I guess that's, if you are Kentucky football, you did exactly what you should have done, and you kind of have, with the maybe exception of the South Carolina game, you kind of done that this year. Yeah,
they got the win, 43-7, and defensively, I think they have Kentucky has kind of shown that the strength of their team is they're very good defensively, and offensively. I think that's the question mark. Still didn't, even in the 43-7 win, I don't think they threw a touchdown pass. So it was mainly rushing. I think they had an interception return as well for a touchdown. So it's still, I think the jury's out a little bit on the quarterback. The Georgia transfer, like I said, you know, he's a tough kid, runs the ball hard. I've said it before. I think he looks like, to me right now, he just has a fastball when he throws. I don't know about touch and things like that. But boy, if they better play good defense because they're going down to Ole Miss, and the one thing with Lane Kiffin and them, they can flat score. Yeah. I mean, Ole Miss is top 5 in the country. Four out of the 5 teams that are top 5 are SEC anyway. Right. But they can flat score, and the one thing with Lane Kiffin is that he doesn't really believe in the mercy rule. No, he'll put up as many points as he can get away with. That's right. It's your job to stop him. Yeah. So the question will be, can Kentucky keep up? Because they're not going to shut Ole Miss down. Yeah, I do think. I think it's a great matchup for Ole Miss. I just don't think Kentucky can score enough points. You know, you would think if you were to just take an outside view without knowing much about college football, other than Georgia is the number 1 team, or when they were number 1 when they played Kentucky. And you were to say, well, they've got to be really good on offense, but really Ole Miss might be one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the country. Them in Tennessee. Yeah, right. And, you know, and Tennessee kind of struggled a little bit with Oklahoma in terms of scoring points. I think they settled for a bunch of field goals on Saturday. So, you know, that's going to be interesting, and to see what Kentucky can do to slow down that offense, like you said. Louisville had their biggest test of the year. Good win. Yep, good win. Really kind of turned it up in the fourth quarter and took control of the game. And I thought that was a pretty impressive. Their defense was good. Yes, it was. They scored on a defensive touch. They scored a defensive touchdown and a block kick field goal in the fourth quarter for a touchdown. So their offense only scored, I think, 3 touchdowns. The other ones was through their defense and special teams. But that's good for Louisville. Yeah. Because I think the quarterback's really good if he can stay healthy. They got good receivers. But when they're, defensively, when Louisville is good, that gives them a really, really good chance. And so it's good when they go 3-0. But now they get the big test to go to Notre Dame. national TV on Saturday, and that will be a test. Louisville knocked off Notre Dame last year, so probably a little bit of a revenge game for Notre Dame. Notre Dame only has so many games on their schedule that are top games. They got Louisville, who's in the top 20, and they got USC at the end of the year. Other than that, they don't have a whole lot of marquee games, so it's a big game for Notre Dame.
So back to the Tennessee-Oklahoma game. What did you think of that one?
I love Tennessee. I do. I mean, Oklahoma can't. I mean, finally Oklahoma got something going when they finally changed quarterbacks with the freshmen in. They look better. But Tennessee is for real. I mean, for real. I mean, I'm extremely impressed with them offensively and defensively.
I thought it was an interesting game in the sense that I think that's Oklahoma's first game officially in the SEC. And
they're light years away from the top 5.
They are, and so the thing is,
they're just not good enough offensively, and that's their coach Brett Venable, who came from Clemson. They've had a noticeable letdown in the last couple since he's been there. I mean, no offense. I mean, Lincoln Riley left to go to USC, but they don't quite look to be. They're better defensively than Oklahoma used to be, much better.
Yeah.
But they're not half as good offensively.
Well, and one of the interesting things, and I can't wait to see, Texas in one of these games that's, officially an SEC game against an official SEC opponent. The Big 12, as we talked about in recent years, was basically no defense. It was all offense in the Big 12 in the last few years. And the SEC is really kind of the other way around in a lot of ways. I mean, it's a lot of defense, and there are some good offenses, obviously. But, a lot of that has to do with talent as much as anything. But the defenses are always really good in the SEC, pretty much across the board. And I'm curious to see how Texas looks.
I think Texas will be fine.
Yeah, you think?
Yes. I think Texas will be fine. They got
Cooper Manning's boy is going to be lighting them up?
Well, I don't think he'll be playing much after the other guy comes back.
Yeah, I don't know. He looks pretty good.
I mean, yeah. But
how long can you keep a Manning on the bench?
They've kept him on the bench 2 years.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of honestly that kind of surprised me.
They beat Texas San Antonio.
Yeah, well,
come on. So no, the other guy was a Heisman. He's a top 20 pick in the draft. So I think he'll get the job back.
It is a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about the NFL here in a bit, but it is interesting to me that of all people, Arch Manning decided to not go somewhere else where he definitely could start, and he decided to stay at Texas where he knew he was going to be a backup.
That's great. That shows me something about his character.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's just a Manning way. Even though if you go back and you look at the time that Eli got muscled away from being in San Diego and going to New York, nonetheless, they do kind of stick to where they're going to be. I mean, and their commitments, I suppose. So I do find it fascinating that he could have gone anywhere and played right away, and he decided to stay there knowing he was going to be the backup.
And that's rare.
Yeah, it is.
And he's getting paid handsomely too.
Oh, sure. I mean,
he really is.
I mean, the money's coming no matter.
Yep.
Anything from the NFL that stood out from you from the weekend? I know we got 2 games a night.
A good win from Kansas City last night against Atlanta. That's a good win. I guess Carolina was right in benching Bryce Young.
Yeah.
You hate to say one guy was the cause of all their offensive troubles for the last year and 2 games, but it looks like that's it.
Yeah, Andy Dalton, not known to light people up, looked good yesterday.
Andy Dalton comes in and they score 35 points,
right.
And Bryce Young can't throw a touchdown.
Yeah.
So it does look like it came down to that one. Of course, that quarterback is really important, to say the least.
Yeah, that's right.
Dallas one time got blown out. They made it interesting at the end, but they defensively they are just bad at times, especially if they get behind.
Well, but the Ravens have still got to be a bit afraid about their defense because they keep giving up leads. The last 2 weeks,
right,
and getting themselves in situations where they could have been 0-3, pretty easily if they hadn't been worked out. And
Will Levis keeps making critical turnovers. I mean, he plays well in between the turnovers, but he threw another pick 6. That's 2 pick 6s in 3 games, and he's had a turnover. Whether it's he also fumbled yesterday, but he plays well in between that. But man, those mistakes are costly.
Your description you just gave of him of playing well between the picks makes me think of like a drunk driver who says, "I do fine as long as I keep it between the lines."
Yeah. I mean, it's he has talent, but it's you got to take care of the ball. You don't want to be too conservative where you never try to make a big play, but
yeah.
There's not a lot of patience left in the NFL.
No, and I'm surprised that they've not pulled the plug on him yet. Sort of like Carolina went ahead and did with Bryce Young.
Well, he's better than Bryce Young.
He's
played better than Bryce Young, and he fits the pro. Of course, they didn't have a first. He wasn't a first round pick,
right?
So they're not as invested in him.
Yeah.
But he's going to start winning some games because this new coach and new general manager didn't draft him, so they're not tied to him.
Yeah, he's not their guy.
Right.
Anything else from the NFL?
Nope.
All right, this is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, some good news. Brody Miller, who we talked to last week for the Spirit Week celebration, he had missed several cross-country meets because of, I think, basically an injury. And so he came back Saturday, and he felt like he was going to be in good shape and won the Gatorland Invitational.
That's a good invitational, too.
Yeah, it is. Usually lots of top teams. I'm going to try to get a report up later. If not tonight, it'll be tomorrow. But, yeah, it was a good one. I think, it was good to see him back.
Right.
Because
he's put a lot of work in.
He has, and, he opened the season. He finished second in a big meet and had run well there. So he's hopefully back on his way to being one of the better runners in this region. And that gives him a real shot in the region coming
Absolutely.
up. And, the state meet, there's still a couple of guys out there at the state meet when you get there that are running just incredible times, like in the 15s, that is just insane. I don't know that he's gotten close to that yet, but he's going to be one of those top 5-10 runners.
Okay.
So and then the 15th district soccer tournaments are set. The girls tournament it's all being played over at the Glasgow Barren County Soccer Complex, the boys and the girls tournaments.
Is the girls set yet?
Yes.
I thought Glasgow and Allen still had to play.
They do still have to play. Well, I guess the 3-4 is not technically set, but the 1 and 2 is.
Right. Well, that makes a big difference, right?
Yeah. Well, maybe not. I'm not sure because really, East and Barren have kind of dominated both Glasgow and Allen County in the 2 games they played against them. So East is going to be the 1 seed, Barren's going to be the 2 seed, and then the 3-4 will be decided. Anything can happen, but it's kind of. East and Barren have been clearly better than the other two.
Glasgow's gone from no wins to 5 wins this year.
They have. They've done well.
Mm-hmm.
They've got like 5 or 6 seniors who have stuck with the program, and they got a bunch of young players coming up. And when you watch them play, you can watch them and say, all right, you can see that they're learning, their skills are improving. But yeah, they have had a much better season than they did last year, and even the year before that, honestly. So it's good to see that come back. But back to the part that I was saying is set is actually the times, not the matchups.
Okay, I got you.
So the first game will be at 9 a.m. and then the second game will be at 9:30. So they're basically going to play the 1, 4, and 2, 3 kind of simultaneously because they can use both Glasgow and Barren County's fields over there at the soccer complex.
Not this Saturday.
No, it's October 5th.
Okay.
So a week from this Saturday. And then the boys will be playing, I think it's at 12 and 12:30 is the way it works out. Now, that one is set. Glasgow's the 1 seed. Barren and East are the 2, 3, and then Allen's a 4. And so that's kind of set. And then what they'll do is they'll play those first-round games or semifinals, whatever you want to call it, on Saturday, and they'll turn around and play the championship games on Sunday. And I think the girls' championship's at 1 and the boys' is at 2:30. And all this is, like I said, is going to be at the Glasgow Barren County Soccer Complex. That'll be October 5th and 6th. And I don't, right now, I mean, obviously on the boys' side, Glasgow would be heavily favored to beat Allen County. Allen County's had a good season, though. They're kind of like the Glasgow girls. They've kind of gone from nothing to something.
Relatively new program.
Yeah, and they've got some guys who are playing that have turned into pretty good players. But that 2-3 matchup between Barren and 1 East, I mean, that game could go either way, to be honest with you. It's Barren won the first one 1-0 in double overtime, and Warren East won the second one on penalty kicks. So there's no telling what's going to happen in that game.
It'll be lone score.
Yeah, scoring will be a premium. It'll be like watching like a real soccer game where nobody actually scores any goals. And then on the girls' side, East is a favorite. They got Decca Burr, who's one of the top goal scorers in the state. She's been a problem, although Barron's played them close both times, but they're not playing them in that first round. And then East is, Allen County Scottsville's had their best season, I think, so far. Also, new program. And as you already mentioned, the Glasgow Lady Scotties have played a lot better lately. And so whatever that 2-3 matchup will be, I would think Barron will be favored in it. But, whomever they play, but we'll see. Barron beat Glasgow 3-0 last week. It was not a bad game. It was 2-0. Barron got a penalty kick late that sealed it for him. And then also last week, Glasgow's boys beat Barron 2-0, I think is what the final score of that game was. So on the girls' side of that district, we'll see how it works out. You would think that East and Barron would be the favorites to advance that championship game, John.
Yes, you would think so, though. The scores with Barron and Glasgow were just last week. It's 3-0 Barron. Mm-hmm. So the scores, can be close. But Barron's 7-6-1 and played a pretty good schedule. They lost to South Warren last week too, and so forth. So, we'll see. It won't be a walkover for sure.
No. And then you got some volleyball there. Barron's turned their season around in the last week.
Well, they're 11-14, but they went 4-2 this past week, and they got a huge win against Allen. Which when I heard about it, I kind of went, really, because Allen had beaten Barron earlier 3-0, mm-hmm. and this time Barron came back and beat them 3-1. So. Pretty good turnaround for Barron. A really good week for Barron last week to go 4-2. They won their own tournament as well, so that was a good week. And Glasgow's kind of started off great. Mm-hmm. Now they're at 8-12, and they went 1-6 last week. Their lone win was against Edmondson, but they lost to Metcalf among other teams, and they've kind of hit the skids late in the year.
Yeah. I do know that one of their key players, Memphis Prophet, had been injured, and so I don't know if that's just got him out of rhythm. She's probably their best hitter at the net, and they may have had some other injuries. I didn't get to make it over that tournament. I was helping do some yard work at the church on Saturday.
Right.
So I didn't. Unfortunately, I didn't make it over there this year. But yeah, they have struggled a little bit here lately. And then. Quick turn to MLB. The Reds fired their manager.
A little surprising. He's been there 6 years. I'm not surprised they fired him. I'm surprised they fired him with 6 games left. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah,
5 games left. This is the last week of the regular season. I don't know why you just don't wait unless there was some blow-up that I'm missing. Yeah. That just doesn't make sense.
A lot of times in sports like that, in basketball and maybe even football and that kind of stuff, they'll fire somebody knowing that who they're going to hire next. You know what I mean? They kind of have a bead on what their future is.
Right.
Doesn't seem to be the case with the Reds.
No, I don't think
something we just don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they're hiring somebody this week.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not surprised that they're going to have a new manager next year. It's just the process of why they did it.
Yeah. And then we're closing in. What do we have? 5 games left in the season, something like that?
Otami.
Yeah.
Put on
Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, first player in history to 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases last week. When he went 6 for 6 in one game with 3 homers and 10 RBIs. He's truly.
He's just incredible that we have a modern day. We have a player who's capable of what he's capable of.
There's 5-way players. He's a 6-way player because he pitches. Mm-hmm. Not this year because he had Tommy John, but incredible player. 50-50. He's close to 60. He's got 1 week to get to 60-60. He's up to 54 homers and like 56 RBIs. He'd have to go on an incredible run.
Yeah. Well, it is an amazing thing. You think that every time you've seen everything you can possibly see, and then this guy comes along, and it's just a whole new thing.
Probably the best player I've ever seen.
Yep. All right, so Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.